everyone. I'm Jack Crotty, and I'm a consultant here at McGohan Brabender. On behalf of our entire McGohan Brabender family, thanks for visiting our home. Every company has a culture. It's up to the people within the organization to determine whether that culture is a good one or a bad one. Here at McGohan Brabender, we are blessed to be surrounded by people that have created an incredible culture, and our champion of that is our CEO, Scott McGohan. Once again, thanks for visiting our home, and thank you for trusting McGohan Brabender. Enjoy your time this morning, and it is my pleasure to introduce Scott McGohan.
So, what smells in here? Garlic is what smells in here. And thanks for braving the weather. Everyone hear me okay? Because I could stand here and get the mic, but I like to move around. So, first of all, thank you for trusting McGohan Brabender, and thanks for spending the next hour and a half with us as we talk about culture. And to kind of level set this, what we're not going to talk about a lot is McGohan Brabender's culture, because that would be slightly arrogant. Agreed? Because for a long time, we didn't even know we had a culture until people started telling us that we did. So we had no idea what that meant to us. And then we kind of got lucky in that our founder, my dad, taught us a lot. And so where did he find his passion for culture? He found it, he grew up in a 2-bedroom house in Miamisburg, Ohio, with 8 brothers and sisters. And their basement was a dirt floor. I remember because I used to play down there. And they had one of those, remember the things you put coal in? They didn't put coal in it when I was a kid, but it was there. And he drove a milk truck when he was 13. And then he got a full-ride golf scholarship at Bowling Green State University, and had my brother and I have a twin brother. He says he's the better-looking one. When he was a sophomore in college. So he had a huge reference point. And my grandfather worked at NCR in the factory. I lost him when I was about a freshman in high school. What I remember of my grandfather is he always had a suit and a hat on. And he was a factory worker at NCR. And he was just an amazing, amazing, amazing man. And I think the reference point of caring about culture and caring about a people was set in the way he was raised. And he wasn't going to be one person inside of a building and another person at home and another person on the golf course. He was going to try to be one person. And so he taught us some things. And number one, what he taught us is treat your employees the way you want your customers treated. It sounds pretty simple. Actually, it's as simple as that. It's not that complicated. And number two, he said, stay profitable in your business so you can always make good decisions. I was on the phone yesterday with the CEO, and he was forced to make a bad decision because he didn't have the money to make a good one. And that's tough. That's hard. Number three, what he taught us is give back to a community that gives to you. So then our job today, what we're called to do, is how do we carry that culture forward? So the big question that we have today is, in honesty and humility and authenticity, is what is our culture? What does it smell like today? Because people have an amazing sense of smell. One of the things that I get to do, who here has heard of the organization called Aileron? Yeah, so it's an amazing institution. The Mattil family sold the Imes company, really dedicated and passionate about entrepreneurship, and said, how do we teach organizations how to perpetuate their organizations and stay in the local community? And so I'm involved out there, and I'm lucky enough I get to teach a class called the President's Course. And I meet with multiple CEOs and presidents once a quarter, and I talk to them about the impact on culture in the organization, what it's about. And so that's a lot of stuff that we'll talk about today. Because I've been in hundreds of companies. I've been here 30 years, almost to the day, which I don't feel that old, but apparently that's a long time. And I've been in companies that think they have great cultures and have terrible cultures. I've been in companies that think they have terrible cultures, and they have wonderful cultures. But probably most often that I see is companies that have great cultures that maybe might not leverage them the way they should. And here's why. Because I think a lot of times when we talk about culture, it feels like we're being boastful or arrogant. And in our business, quite frankly, it's always about people. I don't care what business you're in. It doesn't matter what business you're in. Products are innovated by people, designed by people, manufactured by people, put together by people, right? Shipped by people, opened up by people, bought by people, thrown away by people. It's always about people. Always has been, and hopefully by the grace of God always will be. It's about people. And so when you talk about, so I was at doing a session at Aileron. There was a guy here in the company. I won't say his name. It was really interesting. And I was in the middle of this presentation, and he stood up and said, "I don't have a culture, and I don't need one." And fortunately, at Aileron, so they pay us, but I said, "Hey, I don't want the money. What I want to do is give back to your organization and give back to the community." So I said, "Hey, look, here's the deal. I don't get paid to do this, so I'm going to just say what I feel. And if I get fired, then then right there's the door. I know my direction and the way out." And I said, "Look, as an owner and as an entrepreneur, you have the right to not want a culture, right? That's his right. But you have one." And he said, "But I don't." And I remember asking the room, like, "Okay, fine. So who here in the room thinks he has a culture?" Every hand went up. And he stood up and he was like emphatic, "I don't have one." I'm like, "Oh, you have one. Trust me, you have one right now." And after about 2 hours of talking to him, he came up to me afterwards and he said, "Hey, I'm really sorry for interrupting your class. And I get it. I understand it." He goes, "I'm going to sell this place because I don't even like what I'm doing." And I'm like, "You know what? That's probably the greatest gift to humanity that you can do is just chuck it, move it off to the side." Because every culture has a smell. Every single culture that we do business with. And we move around, and the big secret is, what do you want your culture to smell like? So who here has been to a Time Warner store lately? Anybody? So if you go to Time Warner or a Verizon store, is that everyone's favorite thing to do? Probably not. So I am blessed with just an amazing wife. Her name's Lori. We've been married 30 years, and she's my best friend. My daughter just had a grandson. That's my son-in-law in the back that introduced me. And our grandson's name is Jackson. And those of us that are grandparents, we should have had grandkids first. They're a heck of a lot more fun. And then I have a 25-year-old son who's just an incredible young man, owns his own company, and he's a storyteller through film, and he is just killing it. And I'm really, really lucky to be the CEO of this organization. So on the weekend, I had time to go to Time Warner. So I'm not like barraged with, I got soccer practice, dance practice, all that stuff that you do when your kids are growing up. I certainly understand. And by the way, when your kids move out of the house, it is awesome. It is unbelievable. You develop a new culture. But I had time to go to Time Warner, and my expectations were this is going to be terrible. I wanted to watch the Buckeye game. The box wasn't working. I had to go get a new one. But I had time. So I walk in, and the store is packed. There's 30 people there. They're all over the place. Everybody looks like they're miserable. And I walk in, and I have to type my name on an iPad. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, I bet I'm here for 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And in 7 minutes, they called my name. That's how fast. And within 12 minutes, I was out the door with a new box. It was unbelievable. Now, I took it home. It didn't work. Then I called them, and she was really nice on the phone, and she said, "I need to ship you a new remote. I'll ship it to you FedEx." So I got that like on Monday, and that remote didn't work. They had to send me another one. So then the next weekend, I'm with my wife, and I'm like, "Hey, we have to go to the Time Warner store." And what did she do? "Oh, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" And the same thing happened again. 12 minutes, in and out. So we all have different cultures. We have expectations too. Sometimes we need to surrender to those expectations, because sometimes they can exceed. They can be like amazing things can happen through that. So when you talk about what your culture smells like, who here has a dog? Dog? Gotcha. Who here has ever taken their dog to a dog park? Raise your hand. Okay. So I want you to imagine taking your dog to a dog park. And so you're really excited about doing that. And you put the leash on the dog, and you're going to take this dog to this strange new environment where there's other dogs, and you're kind of excited about it. Your dog is not that excited about that because your dog's super curious. So their tail probably goes underneath them. They're nervous. And you walk in, and so they're panning like what this environment is all about. They're looking at other dogs. But one thing that you will tell in a dog is their nose is going bonkers. What does this place smell like? What is this like? And then if you've had a good experience in a dog park, normally what will happen is you'll let the leash go off, the dog takes off, and everyone has a blast. The dog can't wait to go back. You can't wait to go back. And sometimes our cultures are the same way. The same example is true for putting your child on their very first school bus. Who remembers that? Right? So you got a brand new backpack. They're dressed up in the nicest clothes in the world. You've got the cameras going. I was a hot mess when Courtney went to kindergarten. A mess. Fortunately, my wife was a bigger mess, but I was a mess. And so I want you to imagine this little girl walking out in the driveway, and then this humongous yellow vehicle pulls up on the corner or in the front of your driveway. What is going through that little girl's head? So she sees a big yellow bus, and then the door opens. And the bus driver, in my experience, on the first day of school, they're super nice, right? So they kind of wave in. So Courtney begins to hear what's about to happen. And then she's got to touch the handrail, and then she walks on the bus, and she sees other kids that are probably just as scared and probably in that much fear. And then she gets to smell what? The smell of bus seats. You guys remember that? You'll never forget it. Or diesel fuel, right? It's one of those two things. It's one of those two things. And I think in an organization, most often, sometimes, our culture should be that important. Because we're putting people on the bus. And so what they see, what they feel, what they hear, what they touch, and what they smell is really, really, really important. Name places that you visit that smell great. Just yell one out. Bakery. Bakery smell good. What else? Flower shop. What else? What's that? The ocean. Beach. What'd you say? Oh, yeah. How about this Cinnabon store at that airport or the mall? Unreal. What about places that smell bad? What's a place that smells bad? 75. 75. I like that. I-75 smells bad. What else? What's that? A cab, right? A dumpster, right? People have a sense of smell that works pretty quick. But you know what they smell, I think, the fastest? Our motive. Our motive for caring about people. And the definition of a motive is our intention that's often disguised or hidden. People smell that. We smell it all the time. You smell it when people call you at home in a cold call, right? We smell it. I don't know that number. Donuts to dollars, that's somebody wanting either money or my clothes or something, but I'm not picking it up. People smell a motive. So the secret is what do we want our culture to smell like? This is hard to say, but it's the truth and why culture is so important to me. Because I grew up with a great dad who taught me a lot. But why culture is so important to me is because I smelled first, and I didn't smell very good. So about 17 years ago, my assistant, her name's Victoria, came in my office and said, Scott, you have values painted on the wall, and you don't exhibit one of them. And I have my own values, and you torque every single one of them every day. Today's my last day. That's a mic drop, right? Gigantic. Now, when I left there, I went home, and I was more worried about what people would think about me with her leaving than her leaving. Does that make sense? Which is really sick. That's doubly sick. So I thought about it, and I asked her, I'm like, hey, one is I was like the 8th employee in the building. You know, I was a founder's kid. Probably no one was willing to challenge me. I thought I was a good person. I thought I was a good dad. I was #1 in sales for 10 years. I ran marketing, had the gift of gab. I felt like I was okay because I built my life from the outside in. So I felt like if I drove the right car, wore the right clothes, had the right stuff, that I would be accepted by people. I thought it was an outside world. What I never really spent time on was building the inside of Scott. Who was I created to be? What could I be like? What was my core values? Because I was too concerned about the outside. So I got help. I got a coach, and I asked her, I'm like, hey, if I got a coach and you could talk to that coach every day, would you give me a shot? Would you give me a fighting chance to maybe change? And she said yes, under one condition. Every day, her and I had to get together. I went to her workspace, and we had 3 questions for each other that I had to ask. Are you okay? Am I okay? Are we okay? For 12 months. It was awful. It was the biggest piece of humble pie like I had ever eaten in my life, but fortunately I had someone brave enough to have that conversation. I'm a better person for that. And what I forgot to tell the last group is today, Victoria is still here, and she's my best friend in this company. She's my truth teller. And we were like that, inseparable. So I got involved with leadership. I really got involved in reading and learning about people, emotional intelligence, got involved in coaching, started teaching some classes here in McGohan Brabender. One was titled The CEO of You. So if you were the CEO of you, would you be hired, fired, or on probation? And really got involved in that, which really gave me a different lens for my passion for culture. I have this big belief that the bottom can be a beautiful place in our lives. If we know we're there, sometimes we don't, and then we dig. So we can climb out of that. So culture is really, really, really important to me. And I'll give you some examples of some things that we do, but for the most part, I want to just level set this because I'm really maybe not that smart. Maybe what I have is great experience. And what they say in life is life's a wonderful teacher and she rarely gets an apple on her desk. Well, I've taken some bites out of some pretty nasty apples. And maybe I can prevent you from taking the same bite. So the currency of culture is really around relationships with people. That's all it's about. It's about people. I'm a big believer in the fact that we have to understand our environments in which we work in. Because people in our buildings and in our cultures and our organization, they use these 5 senses all the time. For the most part, some of us, all we do a lot of is we just tell them how they should feel, what they should see, what they should taste, and what they should smell. So what we need to be able to do is be able to have an experience where they can do all 5 of those inside of our organization, just like a school bus, just like a bus driver saying, come on in, you're going to love this, this is going to be fun. Because inside of an organization, this is what your folks are doing right now when they walk inside your building, as you open up your own school bus door. Do they see people working? Do they see meaning inside the organization? Do they see eye contact, yes or no? So when you look at somebody in the eye, it's one of the greatest gifts in the world. Or do people look down? Do they see smiles and frowns? Do they see open doors and closed doors? So is that what they see? Do they see fear? Do they see vision? Do they see purpose? Do they see future? Or do they see failure? It's one of the greatest gifts about Kathy at the front desk. So if there's somebody that's really important in your organization, it should be the first impression that your customers and your people see. One of the things we do when we bring people on is we'll call Kathy and say, what'd you think of so-and-so? And then if she says, who? Huh, that's not good. Oh, they'll say, do you mean Dean? He was amazing. He was so nice. He was so kind, right? Check box, next level. And so that vision is so important, what they see. Do they hear encouragement? Do they hear good enough? Do they hear inspiration? Do they hear your vision? Is it relentless? Do they hear values, brands, purpose? Do they hear from leadership? Or is leadership just always in a meeting? You know, always behind closed doors? Because at least in my role, what I'm really passionate about is being in a relationship with people, not in their roles. Who's in HR? Raise their hand. The last thing you want is a CEO or a president walking around telling your people how they could do your job, right? It's awful. Hey, we used to do it this way, right? It happens all the time. And I've gotten my hand slapped 1,000 times, so I don't do it anymore. I just want to be in relationship with people. But if the people don't see you, how are they going to get to know you and how are they going to get to understand you? And then things like, do they see top-down leadership, or hopefully what they see is bottom-up leadership? Do they feel pressure? Do they feel perfectionism? Who here has the disease to please? Yeah, I think it's almost an incurable disease. There's no prescription drug for it. It's hard. Our desire to be liked versus trusted needs to shift. So as leaders, we need to, our desire should be to be trusted first, and then to be liked second. And that's hard. Because we all, whether, you know, social media is a good example. Bing, you know, I like you. As people tell you where they are and they're not, and who they're with that you can't be, and what they have that you can't have. And bing, right? Or bing. And we do that emotionally when we're around people, and especially as leaders, so they're watching us. So do they feel like they're small? Do they feel compassion? Do they feel contentment? Do they feel purpose? Do they feel like they're really valued inside of their organization? And then ultimately, what do they taste? So they taste results. So that can be a form of compensation. It can be a form of encouragement. So when they taste that, do they taste leadership? Do they feel spoiled? Does your brand and your building and your just outlook on your industry, does it feel fresh? Does it feel exciting? Does it feel new? Does it feel reward? Is it just BS? Do they hear something and then things really don't change? They just hear this speech from the pulpit and that's the end of it? Because ultimately, I think what they do is they just smell it. So they can smell a motive, they smell they smell arrogance, they smell pride, they smell purpose, they smell I matter, they smell teamwork, they smell growth. That's what they smell when they come inside your building. And that's what's really important. Now, on our school bus, we have to identify, hey, which of these values do we have that are good, and which ones do we have that are bad? Because on our bus, we've got 4 types of people in our organization. The first type of person that's on our school bus is a victim. Who here has a victim in their company? Yeah, these are awesome people. Because this is what they see, they feel. They feel shock, they feel grief, they feel loss, they feel anger, they fear disbelief. What do? They avoid, they withdraw, they challenge the organization, especially progress and decisions. And then they say things like, I can't believe this is happening. Poor me. Now, we had to identify these 4 characteristics for a reason. Not because we're really smart, because the Affordable Care Act happened in 2010. So, and our business got Yahtzeed overnight. So we woke up the next morning and employees were saying, hey, am I going to have a job? You know, it was like, that's a really good question. It'd be a good question to answer. And so we decided to just basically nuke what we were doing and say, let's just start all over. So it would have been nice if we would have decided to do that in light of a catastrophe, but we didn't. We waited for that to happen towards us. So if I encourage you to do anything, you don't have to wait for a catastrophe. You can do it now. Because the next person is a critic. So they feel anger, resentment, they feel confused, they feel entitled, they blame, they act out, they overreact, they disrupt your workforce. And then they say this, I hate this. This place isn't what it used to be. Who's heard that before? Yeah, I think the one thing that's really grateful is let's be grateful it wasn't what it used to be, right? Because the economy's changed. I love buying locally. I do. I really do. And when I can, I try. But last Friday, I ran out of K-Cups. I love coffee. I'm addicted to coffee. And I was really lazy because I love the Dunkin' Donuts K-Cups. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Kroger's. It's late. And I got on my app and I pulled up Amazon Prime. And I was like, huh. And it said, hey, you can have it here by Sunday. Huh. And then you can have it delivered every month. Huh. Boom. And then on Sunday, I opened my front door. I had like 3 K-Cups left by Sunday. Had like a carton of 80. And I knew they were going to show up. Now, I'd rather support Kroger's, right? I'd rather support someone locally, but man, did they make that easy for me to do. Because here's what I know. 9 out of 10 times when I go there, they're out of Dunkin' Donuts. So I didn't want to waste my time, right? I would have gone there, but every time I go there, they're out. And I want my Dunkin' Donuts K-Cups. I'm selfish. I'm selfish that way. And so when they say that, nobody cares, this isn't what this place isn't what it used to be. Our organizations can't be that way because the economy changes. It's different. So the bystander, what do they do? Shock, frustration, engaged. Can you in the back hear me? Am I loud enough? Okay, am I too loud? Okay, gotcha. Because I could stand here, but this would really, I don't like that. I like to move around. So what do they do? What do they say? It's not my job. I'm too busy. Hey, this is just a management fad. So who here has a CEO or a president that reads a book and it's like the book of the month club? Yeah. Yeah, they wear you out, don't they? You're looking at them. Yeah, I know, because I read a lot. But what's really interesting about that is, so I stopped really giving the author credit because it would freak people out. So now, I don't like taking someone else's credit, but I'll really take what I read and say, hey, this is my next great idea. It might be from a book like Blink or other books that I've read that are really, really cool. I can't turn it into a book of the month, a club. But what we need is a bus full of believers. That's what we need. A bus full of believers that believe in who we are. They are energized, they are collaborative, they are focused, they are optimistic. What do? They own their own job. They help other people. They seize the opportunity. They say things like, let's try this. Let's do this. We can do it. We've been successful before. It's up to us. Those are the people we need on the bus. Now let me say this. The bystanders, the victims, and the naysayers, reforming them is not easy, right? But when you reform them, they're your biggest advocates by far. Because what we would never want to do is turn our whole company into these people. That would be called utopia, and that's a really bad place to live. It's just, if I ever landed on this island of utopia, I think I would swim away from it as fast as I could, because it's just not fun, right? There's no way, it's not possible. I think if it was there, it would be enormously plastic in regards to how we're moving forward. So what is culture? Culture is an emotion. It's made up of beliefs, rites, and rituals, and it's thought in a particular community. And so, bless you. And we all have a culture. So for example, our culture, our number one value is family. And we say, our sense of family encompasses our home, our work, and our community. We put it in that order for a reason. Because we feel like if our motive as an employer is to create better moms and dads, better men and women, then we would benefit from that. And then if we would benefit from that, our community would benefit that as well. We didn't hire a consultant to come up with that. We put our employees in a room for a day and said, what do we care about? And family lifted off, right out of the room. And that's why it's on the wall. That's why we have the family wall when you walked in, all those picture frames, right? So we tell that. But here's a lesson we learned. So we would bring people in our company and say, we're about family. And someone would go I just came from one of those. I don't want another one of those, right? So we had to be kind of specific about what family meant to us as an organization. So, because I grew up in I had a great family. My parents are still married. I grew up in Centerville. I call it Centerville, right? I went to great schools. I just got lucky. I had nothing to do with that. I just got lucky. That's it. But so when we articulate our values, we have to be kind of somewhat specific in regards to what that means. Because when you in your organization, people want to know what your motive is inside your organization. And the first thing they'll look at is the communication channels, how you communicate with your workforce. Who here meets with their employees monthly? Anybody? All their employees? Okay, great. What about quarterly? Quarterly? Annually? What about writing things to them? Newsletters, blogs, that kind of stuff? Yeah. I don't care how great you are at this. it'll be recognized as the biggest problem inside your organization. It always has been, it always will be. Communication. It's a hard thing. So you cannot outdo this. People will mostly see more than what you tell them. They're like children. They are. They will do what they see. And unfortunately, what you allow in your organization, you encourage. That's hard. That's really hard to say. But if you allow that behavior to exhibit, then other people see you allow it, and then they go on their way. In the last session, too, a lot of human resource people asked me about, hey, how do you address people maybe in a C-suite position that don't agree with my values, that don't agree with what I want to do? Can you help me do that? And that's hard. One of the recommendations I would give to you is if you really have a desire to change it, is it's an amazing thing when you can get these thoughts out of your head on paper, right? I always say your brain's like a bad neighborhood and you shouldn't be there alone sometimes. But when you take those thoughts and you put them on paper, like amazing things can show up. Because if your motive is authentic and humble and honest, any great leader should listen to you. If it's self-serving and accusatory, then you might be pushing a rock uphill. So, like, if you wanted to do that, then put it in writing and understand it. What is your motive for wanting to change that? Because people watch what gets rewarded around here, or how do people get punished around here? And then ultimately, how do you get paid? Who here has kind of a leadership progression where it shows you how I grow in this organization by role? Yeah, those are wonderful. Those are fantastic. I don't think a lot of us do that. We don't do a very good job of that. We need to. We need to show people a path in regards to how they grow inside the organization. We all should be better at that. When I first started here, my very first day, I sold loose diamonds in New York City before I worked here, which was really, I get on a plane, and if I felt safe, people say, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I sell loose diamonds in New York City. They'd be like, wow. Now you get on a plane, you say, what do you do? I don't say, oh, I sell health insurance. The Wall Street Journal comes up, and I don't want to talk to you. So it's just really, really, really interesting. And I forgot where I was going to go right there with that very same point. So one of the things, too, that I think is really important for people to understand, who here has seen the Simon Sinek video, The Golden Circle? Anybody? Great video. Matter of fact, if you were going to watch one video on YouTube, watch this one. So it's Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, Golden Circle, as he talks about the power of the why inside of an organization. Why you do what you do every single day. Because what a lot of organizations do is you will celebrate really, really big successes, right? You'll celebrate them. And unfortunately, your employees will celebrate your growth and your successes for you. They'll applaud with you. But if you get a really big account and you're growing, and after that celebration, what are they thinking in their head? How
does it affect me? What do I get out of it?
Yeah. And you know what most of them think? This just sounds like a lot more work, right? It does. And then they think that the cats that own this place get to take a bucket full of cash, put it in their trunk, and go home. And what a lot of times people don't understand, when $1 comes in the front door, about 8 cents squirts out the back. That's it. And then 8 cents gets used for maybe buying new technology, or rehiring people, or paying for lovely health insurance rate increases, right? So that's what we do. We reinvest back inside our organization. So helping people understand why you get up every day and do what you do is super important. The example Simon talks about on this video is the Wright brothers. And it's a great example because those two guys were from right here from Dayton, Ohio, that made bikes that all of a sudden just figured out how to fly a plane. Well, they were competing against a guy called Langley. You ever heard of him? Yeah, so he had $50,000. The smartest, brightest people in the country. And two guys from Dayton that built bicycles beat him, and they spent $1,400. $1,000 of that was for lodging. Wow. Now, I think why they decided to fly is because their passion wasn't about ego and pride, about applause. They were on a mission to say, I think we can do this. And I think our organizations need to understand that as well. So inside of McGohan Brabender, our vision is empowering businesses with solutions so they can get jobs, keep jobs, and grow their companies. Empowering people with choices so they can make better decisions, which drives to better behavior, which drives to better health. And if we're lucky, we can empower healthier living. And if we're super lucky, we can give healthier birthdays to people. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot more exciting than selling health insurance. Agreed? Because when we bring a new customer in the building, what we want to do is we want to have our workforce saying, you know what, we can impact that organization. We can impact our community. We can make a difference. It's a new opportunity. It's not more work. It's different. And understanding the vision and getting that out of your workforce and making sure they understand it is mission critical. Because too much of us talk about what we do and how we do it, and we do it way too much. Talk about why you do it every single day. And you can change the landscape of your organization. It's hard work. It's not easy to do. I was at Aileron with a guy. He owned a heating and air conditioning company. Anybody own one of those here? Anyway, we were asking him what he did. He goes, well, I sell heating and air. I'm like, okay, great. So when do customers buy that? He goes, well, when they buy a new building or it breaks. Well, that doesn't sound like a great strategy. Now I sell it and then it breaks and then I get a new one. And I said, well, really, what do you sell? Well, I sell a heating and air conditioner unit. No, I think you do more than that. So we got to this thing, well, I think you might sell an atmosphere, right? I think what you sell is, I think you sell comfort on demand. That's what you sell, right? So how do you create a vision and a mission with your workforce that they're just this unbelievable deliverer of comfort to people based on their own bodies, based on their own families? That's different. When a workforce understands why, their ability to move towards you and your mission is off the hook. It's completely different. And then the mission is really how you get to do things. So how do you get to do that? An example for us is just we provoke people to think differently, which means our language is different. Reveal new opportunities, encourage action, and then provide a path. That's our mission. That's how we do it. And then what we do is our brand. So our brand is good, smart people effectively managing the entire healthcare dollar. And then I added a circle on top of Simon's target. So of who gets to do that, and that's our values of family, integrity, communication, teamwork, and knowledge. What we sell at McGohan Brabender is from the neck up. We sell knowledge. That's what we sell. Now, when we first started doing this, here's something that was really great. If you have really great employees that are willing to tell you the truth, our first one was empowering healthier living, and it was a paragraph long, and it sounded great. If you can memorize it, it was amazing. And then we had someone in our organization that went to the slide and said, hey, that's really good. I'm not sure I can remember all that, but I see this word empowering, and then healthier's down here, and then living's, why don't you just say empowering healthier living? And we were like, well, that makes too much sense because we're way too smart. We need more words. And they made it simple for us to understand. So, and it wasn't to really talk about our mission and values. The intent of this was really to talk about building the purpose of why, which should be rooted in your culture. And then you got to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So I use a board of advisors at Aileron. We have 3 of them. They're terrific people. And they told me, I want you to spend the next 18 months, every week I write a blog to the workforce, telling your workforce every week what each of these mean. And I was like, that's boring. Like, I want to read a book and tell them about this other stuff. And they're like, no, we're not going to let you off the hook. 18 months, 4 months each. You got to go. And you're not allowed off target. And it was probably the smartest thing they ever told me. Because by the time I was tired of writing and talking about it, the workforce was finally starting to say, I think this is clicking. I think I'm getting this. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. My opinion, what culture is not about is culture is not about perks. Ball chairs, ping pong tables, foosball tables. I don't think that's part of culture. Does that make sense? So I don't know if you, but hey, by the way, if anybody wants something to drink, if you want to get up, like, you're not going to bother me at all. There's drinks back there in the back. But like, Google has sous chefs. Does anybody here have a sous chef? Wouldn't that be awesome? You know? or a massage therapist or like a yoga teacher. It would be amazing. Those companies drive about $2 million per person, per employee. They can afford that. But I don't really think their culture is about the sous chef, right? I think some of us think it is. It's not. And it shouldn't be about those perks. It shouldn't. And what I'm most emphatic about is culture should never be about profitability. Should never be about whether you're making money or losing money. I think culture is like love. Like I love ice cream and I love my wife, but I love them in two completely different ways, right? But I'm not sure if I'm making money or losing money that my love for my wife changes. And I think our culture should be the same when we talk about profitability. We should be that intentional about it. Does anyone here still do turkeys at Thanksgiving? You got a few, good. Yeah, that was like a staple, wasn't it? And, but then we had it they were frozen, they were messy, it was a pain in the neck. But sometimes when business is bad, we pull some of that stuff back. And boy, the consequences of pulling some of that stuff back can be catastrophic. So we have to be really careful what we're gonna give, right? Because sometimes we gotta pull it away. So super intentional about what that's all about. Culture is about your organization when no one is watching. Culture is about how guests feel when they see your people, treat your employees the way you want your customers treated. And that's what culture is all about. When the people walk in your workforce, what do they see? What do they feel? What do they hear? And what do they touch? Culture is also about who you are when things are really tough. Who here had to do a RIF or a downsizing in their career? Yeah. It's one of the hardest things in the world. I don't even like talking about the time we had to do it. It's one of the hardest days, I think, as a leader in this company. There's nothing harder. And I can remember some of the people saying, well, hey, I'm glad we're doing it, aren't they? Because I'm out of town. Like, no, you're not. You're not out of town. You're in town. You don't have to say a word, but you will be here. And you will be here on Saturday when we have to pack boxes and put it in people's car. It's that important. You will be here. And how do you handle a downsizing? How do you manage that? How do you manage deaths inside your organization? So how do you handle that? You know, moms, dads, employees, things that are really tough. We have a little girl who had cerebral palsy, and she helped McGohan Brabender for the last 5 years. Her name is Kaylee. And she redid our supplies. And my dad was a really good friend of hers, and she used to come here and fill the office supplies and just walk around the building and help us. And she was just an unbelievable gift of encouragement and a steward in fighting forward. And she died this morning. She passed away. This beautiful little girl, right? Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little girl. And everyone in McGohan Brabender is kind of hurting because of that today, right? So how do you handle that as an organization? Then market pressure. I think some of us in business, sometimes when we know things are coming towards our business, we're like, we're not going to tell our people about that because they're going to freak out. I think sometimes letting your people know what's coming towards you can actually be a great benefit. So this is what the market is doing to us. How do we adapt to that? How do we change that? Can you help us understand that? They can actually probably provide more value in you telling them than you trying to maybe protect them as a leader. Culture's got to be protected because it can be destroyed overnight. It can be destroyed overnight. I mean, absolutely. There is no question about it. Who here is the carrier of the culture in their organization? Awesome. Raise your hand high. Put it up there. Let me see them. The carrier. Boom. Okay, cool. Because it can it can be a big job, right? It can be a really big job. Now, what your leaders can't do sometimes is tell you what to do, but they're not willing to live those same behaviors and attitudes. That's hard. That's when you need to be Victoria, right? That's when you need courage to have that conversation with C-suite or owners or principals in the organization. This is what you want. This is how you behave, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if it's that important to you, I need to coach you around some of these issues specifically. Because culture in trouble is a culture that lost their clear values. An example of that would be Wells Fargo. So we heard of Wells Fargo. Their logo was a stagecoach. right? So they've been around for a while. Agreed? Who here has read the book Good to Great? Right? Jim Collins wrote a book. Wells Fargo was in there. He had to write another book. Anybody know why? Because about 3 of the companies he said were great are gone. So he wrote another book called How the Mighty Fail, right? But here's what I think about Wells Fargo. One is, I think they're a good company. I really do. I think this is what happened. I think somebody in the organization allowed somebody to sell someone a credit card they didn't ask for. And then that person came in the next day with a new dress on, a new suit on, went on vacation, bought a car, and then the rest of the workforce said, I think I want some of that. And then they did it again, and it was like, well, they're not getting in trouble for doing that. I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do it. And the next one does it. 4,000 people lost their job. You know who should have been the first one to go? Person at the top. Because I don't think what you had is a company full of 4,000 bad moms and dads, men and women. I don't think you did. I think you probably had one. But a company that loses their values is a culture in trouble. A lack of agreement. Anybody here have a Switzerland in their company? So you know when employees come to you and ask you, hey, can I do this? And you say no, and they go in someone else's office and they get, look at those heads. This is awesome. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we're really good at that, aren't we? Oh, that's fine, go ahead, no big deal. But a lack of clear values, it might mean you might have places in your organizations where people can get answers that go against what you're really trying to accomplish. Conflicting subcultures. This is where you'll find the naysayers, the bystanders, and the victims. The important part is to break them apart. Doesn't mean they have to go, but you need to break them apart. Like if you have committees in your organization, it's a real gift to bring some of these in it. Just don't bring them all. That would be awful. But bring one of each in it, because actually they can be super valuable, and you can transform them at that point, a victim, a naysayer, a bystander. Destructive heroes. They're probably the hardest. So that's somebody in your organization that is the #1 salesperson. That's somebody that's the rock star, that gets the blue M&Ms on their desk, right? Or it could be a founder's son, daughter, or related to one of the owners. Make sense? Look at the giggles. I love this. Yeah. I was a destructive hero. I'm a reformed destructive hero. I will tell you the odds of reforming a destructive hero are pretty slim. They're not that great. But one thing that will help you with a destructive hero is do the math. So when you leave here, think of that person and all the time you spend thinking about that individual. So all the time. And then add up all the time you're talking to other people about that individual. And then think of all the people you've had to put in body bags because of those people. And think of all the people that have left because of those people. Does that make sense? So then you add those all up, divide it by 2,080, 2,040 hours. That's your hourly cost of that destructive hero, and you're 10% of the way there. Because I think that's how costly destructive heroes to an organization. And when you get rid of them, what do you normally hear? Yeah, what took you so long? Yeah, they're really hard. I mean, we did it here at McGohan Brabender. We've done it a couple of times. And one of the times I was walking down the hall and the receptionist, Kathy, was on the phone and she caught my eye and she said this. Now, you know what I wanted? I wanted to be like, yeah, I did that. No, you know what? You think I was the last person to know, right? Because I want to rescue and save everybody. I want to be a superhero. Destructive heroes are really dangerous. Disorganized activity. So that's just things like just a bunch of squirrels running around. Who here is manic? Am I the only manic person in this room? Justin's manic, I know that for sure. But hey, does your workforce understand how things get done around here? Is it organized? Do they understand a process? I might be a visionary, but I know one thing for sure, I'm not an engineer. And I've never met a visioneer, somebody that can do it really well. Both of those, right? You're either one or the other. So I respect process, I'm just not very good at it. So I need people around me that know how to do it really well. And then hopefully I just get out of their way and stay out of their way. And I've gotten a lot better at that. But ultimately a culture starts with you. So the CEO of Campbell's Soup came out and said this. You can't act your way out of something you behaved your way into. You can only behave your way out. That's very true. In other words, we can't just act like we've changed. We got to behave the way we've changed. And it's really, really hard to do. It's hard, hard, hard work. So I want you to do this experiment with me. So I want you to close your eyes. I'll close mine too. And I want you to put your head down. And I want you to think about you're at a barbecue, but you're not there. You're above the barbecue. And you can smell the barbecue, or garlic. And you can smell it, and you can hear the wind go through the trees. You can hear kids playing. You can hear maybe someone's hand going deep into a cooler. And someone walks up to one of your employees, and they have this conversation about your company. And that person says, "What's it like to work at blank?" Open your eyes. What I would encourage you to do when you leave here is get really quiet and be by yourself when you paint that picture of what you think they would say. What do you honestly think they would say about your organization? If a random stranger said, "What's it like to work there?" Because the secret is, what do you want them to say? That's the secret. What do you want them to say about your organization? This is the chasm between what they would say and what you want them to say. That's the canyon. It could be a crack. Most often it's a chasm. It could be a gigantic canyon between those two. But if you're super honest about it and you put that on paper, things will start to show off. And then you can make significant changes towards that. However, the most important one to do first is the one about yourself. So you're at that same cookout and someone says, "Hey, what's it like to work with Scott?" What would they say? And then what would I want them to say? And I have to be super honest about that. Because we all have blind spots. Fair? Every single one of us has a blind spot. Raise your hand if you have a blind spot. Here's the greatest thing about blind spots is that we're blind to them. We don't know what they are. I like to call blind spots character defects, right? Now they're blind spots for us for a reason. We don't mean to do a lot of things that we do. Like I didn't want to wound and hurt Victoria that way. I didn't want to do it. I didn't know. I thought I was a great dad. I thought I was a great person. And apparently there was some behavior that was pretty bad. But she told me what I needed to do. So I think with character defects or blind spots, they normally do three things in our lives. Number one, they normally protect us. A character defect. Anger is a good example. So if you've ever met anybody that gets really mad, hot all the time, there is a good, probably good fighting chance that when they were little or something happened to them, anger protected them. The madder they got, the more protected they got. Does that make sense? The second thing it can do is feed them. Sarcasm is a great example here. We all have those people in the building that are the most sarcastic. When we feed them, what happens? They eat more. They become more sarcastic, right? But ultimately, I think what blind spots do to us is they choke us from who we're really called to be. Who we're really called to be. And there's three types of people that can help us identify our blind spots. There's people that care about us, people that care for us, and people that care less. They're really not on the table. It's these two people. So people that care for us are normally tied to us economically, socially, and relationally. So think of this. So who here has kids? Raise your hand. Okay. So you're a mom or a dad, and you're just like, "Hey, I'm going to find out my blind spot. I'm going to sit down on my bed with my son or daughter. Hey, am I a good dad?" And they're looking at their iPhone. Maybe they got a date tonight. They got car keys in their pocket. Maybe it's allowance day, right? Their ability to probably tell you what you need to hear is choked in the fact that they're tied to you emotionally, economically, and relationally. Make sense? The same thing's true with our employees. And I don't care what your role is. If you're responsible for signing their check, or have any leverage over them, whether you mean to or not, their ability to probably be really frank and honest with you is probably limited. Unless you get lucky and you have someone like Victoria. And I don't think there's many people out there that are willing to do that. It's the people that care about us that can tell us our blind spots. The people that aren't tied to us economically, relationally, or socially, that can tell us, where is my blind spot? And how can I improve? My blind spot normally is the fact that I would rather be liked than trusted. And that's a weakness, right? That's a fault of mine. That's a blind spot of mine. And it's hard. I know what to do to be trusted, and I know what to do to be liked. And I'm normally like right in the middle. At least I'm self-aware. Does that make sense? Right? Now it's my choice of what am I going to do about that. But it starts with us, because your impact on culture, especially those of you that are in human resources, it is gigantic. Gigantic. It's normally the organization will look at human resources to be the anchor of the culture. The anchor. It's where all the values, it's like a big bucket, and everyone's looking at HR like, hey, are they going to be able to do this? So it starts with us. So your values, you as a leader, and your values as an organization, and then expressed by how you treat them. So if one of your company's values is friendly, and you're just not friendly, that's a problem. Like, we got to deal with that. So it's how you treat them as an individual, and then how your organization treats them. So if your organization says we're friendly and the organization doesn't treat them nicely, that's a problem. That's called a lie, right? Doesn't make sense. And when rooms stink, they stink because there's a big collision between those two. And the cool part is actually just getting these things on paper and understanding where the gap is. Because the gap is actually your actual behavior. You can think you want to be nice. You can think you're trustworthy. But actually, are you perceived that way? And your company's the same way. Your company is an entity. It's a being. Like, I hope McGohan Brabender isn't off into the future. I hope the name McGohan Brabender has nothing to do with Scott McGohan or Tim Brabender or Pat McGohan. Nothing. Right? Nothing. It should be about the people. They're the ones that are going to carry this culture forward. Not someone's name in brick or on a sign. It's the culture of the organization moving forward. And our goal is how do we fill that gap, and then how do we rinse and repeat and reset those gaps over and over and over and over again. It's that important in regards to our leadership behavior. I think that clock's wrong. What time is it? Okay. We're out here at 1, is that right? Okay. We're going to end early. Does anyone want to end early? No? Gotcha. Because closing the culture gap. So shout out some of the things that you think are really positive in regards to what your employees see when they come in your building. I'm just curious.
A smile.
Smile. What else?
Clean environment.
Clean environment. What else? What's that?
Umbrellas.
Umbrellas. Hey, by the way, was that cool when you walked in? Yeah, that was really cool. Matter of fact, I pulled in because I had to do this in Cincinnati this morning, and I pulled in, and it was pouring down rain. I was on the phone, and there was a brand new employee, and he's standing out there with an umbrella right by my car. And I'm telling you, you can't buy that. You just can't. You can't make that stuff up. You can't. You can't watch your clients come in, and an employee is handing an umbrella, and it takes time, and it's intentional. And it's so important because it's about people. And it's just super, it's such a big deal, and I love it. It's not pixie dust. I love pixie dust, by the way. But it's not pixie dust. It's real, but people need to see it. Like, you need to show it to them. So one of the things, too, is like, if your values are real, publish them. Put them on the walls. Now, if you know your culture is terrible, you can't put great on the wall. Right? You can put good. You can put better, right? So you got to be realistic. And it's, sometimes I'll walk into some organizations and the CEO thinks one way and thinks he or she is killing it, and the workforce is thinking another. And like, well, we're going to do this to the building. I'm like, you'd be better off doing nothing. like nothing, just status quo. Because what you say and what you do, there's just a wide chasm between the two. So when you walk into McGohan Brabender and we have all those picture frames on the wall, that's an example of what we say, hey, we're about family, let's show our people our family. Plus, if you're new here, Dean's brand new, he's sitting in the back, and he needs to find out who he's going to meet with in an hour, he can go to the wall and say, I think it's them. But the other thing, too, is that wasn't our great idea. So we got that from Herb Keller, the CEO of Southwest Airlines. So he has a great culture video out. And in his executive offices back probably 15 years ago, he had a picture of all the family members of their organization on the wall. And so we went home and found a picture of Lori and Courtney and Taylor, and I said, hey, let's put these pictures on the wall. So we borrowed that shamelessly. We just took it from there. So let's show them that. The other thing that we really enjoy is, I don't know if you've seen this, but when you walk in the front door, do you see the little girl with a space helmet on, made out of cardboard, that says Imagine, right? So we used to have this big, huge gold mirror up there. And what we want is generationally, we're going to attract this new group of people towards us. Some call them millennials, right? Some call them that. I have millennials here that think like baby boomers, and I have baby boomers that act like millennials, vice versa. But we need an environment that is going to attract a workforce. It can't look like your dad's Oldsmobile, right? It's not going to attract a workforce. Now, you don't have to have foosball tables and ping pong tables, but it should have an environment where a new entrant wants to come in and say, hey, I want to know more about this place. And they need to see it. The other thing we have out there is a toy closet. Who here has seen the toy closet? Yeah, it's just a cool thing. So one of the things us as employers we do is we take away from family. Agreed? We'll spend about a third of our life in an employer's walls, right? The other third we'll spend with our family and doing other things. And the other third, if we're lucky, we're asleep. But why the toy closet was really important, and actually it was my dad's idea, is when little kids would come in, he'd go through his desk and find like a golf ball or a paper clip or something cool to hand to a kid, because he was really good with children. But what we learned is, what we wanted children to like the name McGohan Brabender. You know, sometimes one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is the fact that we get up for work every day on time, right? Then when we come home, we talk about what happened in a positive fashion. So they see a work ethic that they want to believe into. But when we come home and we bash our employer and we're late or we don't care, they put those traits in their pocket and they take it right to the next employer. And that's who they turn out to be. So what we wanted is when mom or dad said, hey, I have to go to the office and pick up a file, the kids would go, I'm going to go, because I want to go to the toy closet. And they're nice toys. I've taken some. I got a Nerf gun on my desk. I love it. Play with it all the time. HR doesn't like me to do that, but I like it. That's an example of like a toy closet where people see it. And then communicate constantly. So how do they hear it? So who do they hear it from? So you might get a vision from your CEO or president in regards to, hey, this is what we want you to do. Do you believe it? Because if you're the one that's going to tell the story, like, you got to believe it. You got to believe it with every fiber of what that vision and mission is. So we meet with every employee monthly in this room, and then we have feeds for Columbus and Cincinnati. And we just talk about what just happened. What was great this month, what happened where we can get better, where are we at as an organization. We have the Raving Fans Wall. So that's when I met Ken Blanchard out at Aileron, and he was talking about the Raving Fans. And I told Ken, I'm like, hey, I'm taking your, like, I'm borrowing your title. So if an employee here gets a letter from a client, we read that in front of the entire workforce. And then we celebrate that. And then the employees get to sign the Raving Fans Wall. And then we put those notes up on a screen. Because here's the coolest thing about this. Everybody wants to be part of a story. Agreed? If it's a good one. We all want to be part of a story. And if you're not part of the story, if you are really good at telling stories, your workforce will want to be in the next chapter if they didn't make the first one. But what you have to do is you have to tell them what I just saw and who just did that. What do you think those people are going to do that are around them that want to be in the next chapter? They're going to start acting like that. Does that make sense? But you need to tell them. You need to catch people doing great things, and personal handwritten notes are really a big deal. They're huge. They've kind of gone by the wayside, right? So one of the things we do here is 240 people. We write handwritten birthday cards to every single employee. Doesn't say happy birthday, they're blank. So you've got to write like a paragraph about every person, and then we stick a $50 gift card in there, and then we mail it to their home. So it shows up in their mailbox. When's the last time you got isn't it kind of cool when you actually get a letter or something in the mailbox? Because it's mostly junk. Because you can go through that, and with a New York Minute, most of the stuff doesn't even go in the house anymore. It just goes right in the can. So a personal written note or a Post-it note on their desk. Who here has ever walked around their building late at night and seen the workspaces of all their people and really experienced what your employees really enjoy to do? Anybody? Man, I really encourage you to do that, and do it a lot. You'll find out that they love soccer. You'll find out that they love their kids. You'll find pictures of maybe their dream vacation that they've always wanted to go to. You'll find those things out. Just walk around late and just look at them. You might find some amazing things out about people when it's dark and the lights are out and people aren't watching you, and you get to experience kind of what's going on in people's lives. Then taste, so create heroes. So when you see people that are exhibiting those values that you want in your organization, gosh, you need to just prop them up. Make sure they're not the destructive hero. That would be a nightmare, right? But those people inside your organization. I know a lot of times with human resources, I see something great. I do ask HR, can I talk about this? You know, because sometimes they can be like on probate, like they're not doing that great. And you got to be really careful about lifting someone else like that up. And historically, I was never really good at that. Now I got to check in. I got to validate, is that good? And then move swiftly on all opportunities inside and outside the organization. And here's the coolest thing that I love. Most often, when you're afraid to do something, it's normally the right thing to do. It's normally the right thing to do when you're just scared. We had an employee here who was, unfortunately, his son lost his wife and his daughter in the Gatlinburg fires. And they passed away. And it was terrible. It was awful. As they fought for like 3 or 4 days to see if they could find them. And to watch this organization kind of wrap around that family and the things that they did, and 240 cards to the family from people and the resources that went out. We've had people here that have had cancer, and they come into the building, right? They have no hair, and a couple people shave their head. Like, I'm here right for you. I don't have hair either. I mean, just amazing, amazing things. The umbrellas. Nobody here told people to go out there and do that. Do you know that? There wasn't an email that said, please report to the front desk with an umbrella to help people walk. No, right? People see things, and then they see them coming towards them. It's amazing. So make sure you do that. So when you paint your picture, make sure people can see it, make sure people feel it, they hear it, they taste it, and they smell it. I think what's important too is in communication we like to hear, so this is a verbal conversation, and then hopefully some of the things you'll see here, right? When you can get your workforce to touch things, to touch your product, to touch your why, to touch your organization, maybe even to touch you and human resources. When you can get 3 of those 5 senses to connect, like you've got them at hello, like Jerry Maguire. You've got them at hello. When you can connect 3 of those human elements to people. So one of the things that we do here is we tell a story. So this is a video we did a couple of years ago, but it does potentially tell us a story about who we are.
In our world, change isn't optional. It's necessary. And where there's change, there's a challenge. Challenge accepted. We are agile advisors forging new paths in an evolving marketplace. Our mission? To change the way you approach health benefits. Here's the thing. When you've got healthy people, you've got happy people. trust us. We know. We are our own test subjects. We live our programs day in and day out. So when we say our methods are tried and true, we mean it. We've got the insight to cut through the chaos surrounding health benefits, and we share that knowledge every chance we get, because we believe that the more you know, the more equipped you'll be to make smart decisions. We take your health personally, literally, from the groundbreaking solutions we develop to the customized service we give. It's hard work, but we wouldn't have it any other way, because taking care of people is in our DNA. Besides, we've all got a little something to remind us why we do what we do. And at the end of the day, when all is said and done, we can celebrate knowing that we don't just make more birthdays possible. We make healthier birthdays possible. McGohan Brabender. Empowering business. Empowering people. Empowering healthier living.
So that's just cool. So I remember when we told my dad that we were going to change the vision of this organization to empowering healthier living. He said, I think you've lost your mind. I think you're too big for your britches right now. And I don't like it, and I don't think you can pull it off. That was like a whoa. And then he said, but I'm going to give you some time and see if we can do this. And about 12 months later, he came back and said, you know what? I think you guys are onto something. I think you can pull this off. And I love the feeling behind this vision. It's different. It feels different. It feels better. Now, if I would have been afraid, what would I have done? Okay, what do you want me to do? Right? I'm not saying I was right then. We didn't know we were right. We just said we're going forward. Right or wrong, we're moving forward. So for all of us in this room, when we talk about culture, number one, what's really important to me is progress. So, gosh, don't be on a quest for perfectionism. There's one thing worse than someone that is perfect. It's somebody that thinks they're perfect, right? And as leaders in culture, we need to create followers, not fans. So unfortunately, what a lot of leaders do is they're in a race, and they run around, and they run so fast, they wear the rest of us out. And we go to the bleachers, and we just clap. Look at him go. He's so fast, right? Great leaders actually go to the person that's last and carries them across the finish line. And as the people are in the bleachers, they look down at that person and they say, I would follow that person anywhere. That's the pursuit of progress that we're looking for. And then be vulnerable. I mean, that story I tell about Victoria, I hate telling that story. I can't stand telling that story. But it's honest. And it lets people know that I'm human too. And not only that, it really helped me significantly in my own life. And I had someone tell me a long time ago, you're way too vulnerable. It makes you look weak. I was like, I don't know. I think the fact that you just said that makes you weaker than me. I didn't say that out loud because that would be kind of immature. But letting people know that they're not alone is one of the greatest gifts on the planet. That it's okay to make a mistake. Fail fast, fail forward, right? That's how we want to operate. And then you can't have courage and comfort at the same time. And when you feel like you're scared and you feel like you got to make a decision, just, move forward. And then the very last thing is whatever you touch, put your name on it. So I told you about my grandpa. So my grandma and grandpa used to watch us grandkids every weekend. And just about every weekend. They had like 13 grandkids. They grew up in Miamisburg. And they would take us to Daisy's Diner in downtown Miamisburg. And at Daisy's, you could get a beef hot shot. So that's a roast beef sandwich, mashed potatoes in the middle, and gravy all over. It was awesome. And then they would take us to this little toy store next door, and we would buy a toy, mostly a model. And we would put it together like a car or whatever. But then we had to go home with them and watch Hee Haw and Lawrence Welk. It was awful. Even to this day, I hear those songs, I just kind of get a little twist. But one day I woke up and I asked my grandpa if I could cut his grass. And his yard was about 2 of these stages. That's it. It was one of those houses with a sidewalk in the middle and the grass on each side. It wasn't that long. And he had one of those push mowers that had the blades that you would cut your hands off. Like, I didn't think you could buy them today. They'd be right next to the yard charts, if you could. And I asked him to do it. I'm like, hey, can I cut your grass? And so I did it, and a little guy, if you've ever done that, you stick that thing in your chest, and it gets under your ribs, and you just push. Well, I did it twice, and I was like, I'm not buying into this thing. So I got on the ground, and I was looking for the high spots, because I wanted to skim. And I was like, it's kind of high over there. If I get that, I'll be done. And I went and I did it, and he came out and he goes, hey, stop. You didn't come here to cut my grass. You came here to play with your cousins down by the creek. Just go. And so we pushed it back to the garage. And as he set it up on the garage and he locked the door, he shut the door, I thought, I told him I'd do that, and I didn't do it. So I'm going to do it. And I'm like 8. So I get it out and I do it, and probably something that should have taken me 20 minutes, maybe took me an hour. I have no idea. But when I was done, to this day, I think he watched me the whole time. He came out and he was like, this is amazing. This is really good stuff. And I asked him this, and I'll never forget it. I said, why did you let me quit? And he said, well, Scott, here's why. When I first came out here, on the grass, it said, Scott did this job and Scott doesn't care. And my neighbors always compliment me on my grass. And I didn't want to show them your name. So I wanted you to go home, and I was going to erase your name, and I was going to put my name over the top of yours. And I was a little guy. So then he said, whatever you touch, put your name all over it. Your name's all over it. And he goes, and if you don't want to do something, don't even touch it. Don't do it at all. Now, I made a ton of mistakes since being an 8-year-old versus a 52-year-old, but I'll never forget it. And if there's anything maybe I can put my name on, is my passion for culture and people in all organizations, because it's a big deal. I think it's what makes the world go round. So we have a few minutes, and first of all, we want to thank you for trusting McGohan Brabender. Thanks for sitting here for an hour and a half. Really appreciate it. Thanks for bearing the rain, and thanks for trusting all of us here at McGohan Brabender. Any questions for me?
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
So first, your why statement, how long did that take you guys?
Why statement? Gosh, probably 10 months? Probably 10 months. Yeah.
We've been working on it. We're still evolving too. So
Yeah.
Say, hey, did you know? And then your monthly meeting, how did you get people to buy into that? It's something that we are working on. Something I've mentioned a few times, and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't even think about doing this. So how did you get that pushed along?
It's big. I mean, one is you have to do the math. So it's about an $8,000 investment to bring everybody in a room. So basically, you're shutting down the organization. But what you have to think about it, what are the consequences of not doing that? My opinion, far greater than $8,000. So I'm going to spend as much time. So when we have those meetings, it's pretty strategic. So the first thing is any new hires. So we stand up, everybody stands up, we tell a story about a new hire. This is who they are, this is where they came from. They hate it. But they don't have to talk. They don't have to talk. Somebody interviews them and tells a story. Second part is the notes of appreciation. We read those from people. There's normally about 10 of them. Then we talk about sales results, client retention results, what's going on in the marketplace. And then we'll do a forecast, what the business needs to hear. And then that's it. And then we're done. And it's like an hour, in and out. And then once a quarter, we have something called town hall, where we ask employees, we tell employees they can ask us anything they want to ask us. They can ask us. And our job is, in those questions, is to repeat the question, answer the question, and provide color if necessary. You know, because sometimes leadership's like, that's a great, let me mark that down. I'm going to get with HR on that one, right? So in other words, no, yes, maybe, and this is why. Other questions?
I would just like to say, you know, each time I come here, I leave feeling like, man, I can conquer the world. Today, I sat out there in my Suburban, and it was pouring the rain. The gentleman startled me, you know. I'm like, I have my own umbrella, but I refused to lift it because he was so kind to come to my car and do that for me. And I thought, who at my place would do this, you know? And it would start with me. I just said, you know, let me turn the mirror over on myself. What can I do differently to impact change in my place? Because there may be no one in my place that will carry that umbrella, so I need to start carrying that umbrella
Awesome.
myself. So I just thank you all for doing
Yeah.
an awesome job. You guys
Thank you. That might be the very best way. Well, if it's still raining outside, we'll have people with umbrellas that'll walk you back out. Thanks for coming. Thanks for trusting us. Have an amazing day.